Hey, it's Casey. Thank you for tuning in. This week I wanted to touch on crow position, Bakasana. So this is an arm balance, and in my opinion it is one of the arm balances that is the most accessible to most beginners that are looking to add some arm balancing to their practice, maybe looking to gain more strength and more body awareness into the shoulders, the core. There's a lot of strengthening, a lot of finding balance, and a lot of trust involved with this pose. But like I said, it's accessible to most beginners that feel that they are ready to start playing on their hands. Also, it's one of the poses that, yes, you can start with, but you can also work through to find more challenging variations over time. So it is consistently a part of the practice where we can all find a part of crow pose to work on. That's going to challenge us in where we are in our practice. So what my goal is today with this video is to create something that a beginner can come to break down the fundamentals of how to start, the alignment, where to activate. And then once you find that activation and you're understanding more in your body, muscle awareness, and kind of how to set yourself up for the pose, you can work from there and find new variations on how to challenge yourself even further going through your practice. So I'm just going to start breaking it down. In my opinion, the most important part is warming your body up. So take the time to warm up, to loosen up the body, activate your core before you get started. So this is going to be really helpful for preventing future injuries, okay? Be kind to your body, it will be kind to you. A lot of times we jump into things and our muscles are cold and stiff and we're expecting them to perform for us, and they're just going to get irritated over time if we continue asking these things of it without giving it any time to really warm up into what it is we're trying to do. So crow position, I'm just going to demo real quick just in case you're like, what is crow? So crow position essentially is a balance on the hands where you lift the feet off the ground. Okay, so you may have seen this pose before. Maybe you've done this pose before. So either way, I'm hoping you can gain something from this video. So clearly you can see you're going to get a lot into the wrists, the hands, a lot of core strengthening, and yes, there's even some hip opening involved here. If you have any strain in your neck or you have any wrist injuries, I'd suggest working through those first before trying to introduce these into your practice. So first, just warming the body. Maybe start with some neck rolls, rolling your head from side to side, keeping a nice long spine. And I'm just going to briefly go through these stretches, but you can take more time on your own to work through if you have any kinks or if you feel any specific tension through the body. Work through that first, okay? Get yourself nice and limber and warmed up. So maybe do some neck rolls, roll out the shoulders a bit here. You can reach the arms up, clasp the hands, flip the palms up, and just kind of pull them back. Maybe do little side stretches, so you're just warming up. Then you can release the arms, roll them out. Maybe you want to clasp the hands behind you and just work on lifting the arms. Maybe you lift the chest. Maybe you hinge forward. Whatever feels good for you, just kind of get those shoulders nice and open. Okay, work on the rotation. And when you work on rotation, you're actually releasing synovial fluid into your joints. So you're lubricating your joints, so you're finding more opening, more fluidity through the movements instead of feeling little kinks and catches and rough patches in your movements, okay? So once you get that nice and open, let's come into the core. You always want to warm the core up, feeling more heat building. So one of my favorite heat builders for the core is Navasana, boat position. So this can be done in a few ways, and I'll give you the variations. Bent knees, long spine. Start with the hands at the thighs, lean back until the feet come off the floor, calves parallel to the ground. Now you can stay right here, or you can work on extending the arms forward, and maybe you work on extending the legs up. So any of these variations is fine. Take it where you are, but continuously work on lifting the spine, and imagine drawing the legs towards the chest. So you're scooping the lower belly in and squeezing, and you're just holding and breathing, finding the variation that serves you. And you're just going to hold here until you start to feel a lot of intensity. And when you feel that intensity to the point where you want to stop, take 10 full counts here and just hold a little bit longer. Work on keeping that intensity. And the more you do that, the more endurance you're going to build. And then when you're done with that, you can just come out, maybe do that a few times through, and just really start to get everything nice and warmed up. Working on the hips is really important here. So a couple things you can do. Maybe you come into a squat position. If it feels comfortable, you can come into full squat, sinking towards the floor and just working on opening the hips. If you have really tight hips or tight backs of the legs, maybe you're a little bit more up here and you can just work on opening the legs out to the sides. You can kind of do a little rock side to side. You're just opening a lot through the inner hips and then through the groin. Okay, so maybe working there. And then you want to work on warming the wrists. In my opinion, this is one of the most important since you're bearing so much weight, especially when you're beginning. I feel like when you start crow position, you're bearing a lot of weight onto the backs of the arms. You may even experience a lot of bruising, okay? And that's totally common. But over time, as you learn to activate more through the core, less and less weight will be pushed down onto the backs of your arms. So those bruises should go away with time. But when you do have all that weight on your arms, you're taking that to your wrists and your hands. So it's important to warm up your wrists. So I would start coming to a tabletop and taking your hands and flip the palms over and set the tops of your hands to the mat and just kind of lean back as much as you can. So you get a nice stretch to the tops of your wrists and forearms. Just hold there as long as you like. Just get a nice little stretch. And then when you're done, flip the palms back to the mat and then flip the fingertips back as though they're trying to face the knees. They don't have to, but just find as much rotation as you can. And once again, lean back for the stretch to the tops of the wrists. Once again, through the forearms. Just breathe. And then when you're done with that, come forward and just kind of shake it out. You can do this at any time. Just keep yourself nice and loosened up. If you're starting to feel tension, stretch it out. Come back in when you're ready. So when you feel like you've gone through full sequence of opening up the body and you feel like you're ready to kind of start playing around, I'm going to start with some basics of how to get into this pose if you've never done it before. Now, as I demonstrated before, your face does face towards the floor. So if you're feeling intimidated at all about face planting, okay, it's a very common fear in this pose. Grab a pillow or two or a blanket or something soft and cushy. Put it underneath your face where it would be. And yes, there are going to be times when you fall forward. Naturally, your body is going to want to catch itself. But more so than actually falling on these things, more of it is a mental aspect of, trusting yourself. If we have a comfort in front of us, we're more willing to try things sometimes. Even if we're not falling, it's just kind of that comfort of knowing that it's there if we need it. So if you feel that you need a blanket or any kind of cushion, put it down in front of your face and start there. So I'm going to start with what I call low crow. And low crow is great for beginners because it's not so much core activation. You're starting with the basics of just finding balance. So you won't really feel a lot. Like I said, you might be getting those bruises because a lot of your weight is going to be on your arms, but it's easier to find balance in this variation that I'm about to show you. So real quickly, hand placement. I'm going to show you from this view since it's the easiest. You always want your fingers spread wide. So you want to create a nice wide platform for balance. Your fingertips are going to do a lot of the work for you. So if you feel that you come into crow pose and you have a lot of weight into the heel of your hand, you're going to constantly keep falling back instead of trusting your weight to come forward. So you will build fingertip strength. These three fingers, so your middle finger, pointer finger, and thumb, are going to take the most weight. So I want you to really feel the activation of those fingertips specifically gripping your mat. And if you lose that activation, chances are you're going to be coming back every single time. You have to really trust that weight coming forward. Hand placement, shoulder width apart. You don't want the hands wide. You don't want them too narrow. Okay, shoulder width, create foundation. Also from here, making sure that the fingers don't angle out. You want the fingertips to always be angled forward. So think your middle finger should always be facing forward towards the front of your mat. And from there, the fingers spread wide and grip. So once you have the hand placement, you'll start to understand the importance of your fingertips. You'll start to really feel it. So let's go ahead and start from here. I'm going to have you come to just like maybe a low squat position. My feet are about hips width apart, okay? I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to place them down to the mat, shoulder width apart, spread the fingers, and grip the mat with those fingertips. Now from here, you can adjust your feet or your hands to however you need them to feel comfortable coming into this, but try to keep your hips up as much as you can. You're going to bend the knees, and you're going to squeeze the knees around the arms, okay? So you're just taking that low crow. You're squeezing, and you're looking forward. So before I come into it, I want to touch on this. Oftentimes when I see people in crow pose, they're looking straight down at the floor, and sometimes even behind them. And keep in mind, where you look is usually where you go. So if you're looking behind you, you're probably going to topple over yourself. So you want to create length in your body and think of your body as a teeter-totter. If you're coming forward, look forward and pull some of that weight forward so that you can lift up the back end. So keep your gaze slightly forward without cranking the head back, okay? So hand placement, knees hug around the triceps. You're going to look slightly forward and lean. Now you're going to lean into the point where you feel your feet start to lift off the ground. Now maybe it's just one at a time, okay? Now once the feet lift, you can just hold here and work on the balance, okay? Low crow. There's not much core activation here, it's just balance. You're really close to the ground, and then you come back down. Once again, you might have your padding down in front of you, and if so, great. From there, you can work on adding more core stability. Core stability is really important when you're really trying to build into these poses. So that was the balance aspect in crow pose. And if you're starting there, great, work on that. Until you feel comfortable in that pose, keep working. And once you do feel comfortable, then you can start adding more core, okay? So there's a couple things in relation to the core. We think of the core sometimes as just clenching our abs, okay? And this is not that. I want you to think of it even deeper. And in yoga, we go even deeper into the core by learning how to create airlocks in the body. And there's a couple airlocks that we use in coming into not just crow position, but most arm balances. It's really helpful for lifting some of our body weight. So the first one is Mula Bandha. And Mula Bandha is basically at our pelvic floor. It's learning how to lift the pelvic floor. So it's almost like that clenching or that tightening. And I like to kind of say it to people like, imagine trying to stop yourself from peeing. How you kind of lift up and you stop that. And as silly as it sounds, it's actually working towards lifting some of that space or some of that weight up, okay? So that's an important tool to be able to use. And once you learn how to tap into that, you can actually lift some of your weight from the pelvic floor and you become naturally a little bit lighter. And then there's another one that, in my opinion, is my favorite. It feels really intense, but really secure and firm for being able to store a lot of energy and lifting a lot of my weight so that I'm not constantly crushing the backs of my arms. So the second airlock, Uddiyana Bandha, which is basically in the low belly. So in my classes, I often give the cue, draw your navel up and in, okay? And this is that sensation. You always want to be able to breathe through these airlocks, but the low belly, you want to imagine that the navel draws back towards the spine and then lifts up. Imagine that you can store your navel behind your rib cage. And obviously it's not going to move, but you're trying to create that sensation of lifting. So you're scooping your entire low belly in and you're creating a more firm, solid foundation. So not only are you lifting the pelvic floor, but you're drawing the navel in. So most of your weight is hugging now right into your center. And by doing this, your lower body becomes so much lighter. And if you're pressing through your arms and arm balances, you're going to feel this lifted sensation rather than dumping all of your weight down onto your arms. Okay, so once again, that bruising aspect, how to lift that bruising away from the arms by drawing more weight into your center, rising up, then pressing down. So we're going to come into standard Bakasana, crow position. And for this one, once you're ready to start working on more core activation, okay, same thing with the hands never change. You're keeping them here, okay, this time your hips stay up a little bit higher. You're going to slightly bend the elbows back. You're going to bend the knees, and the knees come to the triceps this time. So notice they're not hugging around. They're coming straight to the back. So there's more balance required here. Press through those fingertips. Trust your weight coming forward. You're going to look slightly forward. And maybe you just work on lifting opposite feet one at a time. Okay? Work there if you are. Otherwise, lift one foot. Keep leaning forward until maybe that opposite foot lifts up. Once the feet lift up, touch the toes together, the big toes, and then squeeze them in towards the glutes. You're going to feel activation here already. And then Mula Bandha, lift the pelvic floor. Uddiyana Bandha, now notice the difference. I start to lift, okay? Hold here and breathe as long as you can. And then slowly make your way back down. So I'm not sure if you could see the lift there. I know I could definitely feel it as far as being able to speak and demonstrate. It makes it a little bit more challenging because there's a lot of focus, there's a lot of intensity happening. You will sweat, okay? So real quick, low crow, and when I activate, I can almost lift myself all the way up. And low crow. And then lifting all the way up, and then coming down. So you can kind of see that sinking, and then how to pull that weight up. And I don't expect you to be able to make those transitions, but it just kind of gives you the visual of what it looks like to be active, as opposed to kind of dumping your weight. And like I said, if you're dumping your weight at first, kudos. If that's where you're starting, awesome, start there. Work your way through. As you progress through crow pose, you'll start to find more activation. And just stay with it, be consistent, and you'll start to see some progression. So from crow pose, the next step up from that would be high crow. Now high crow just means moving your knees higher up your arms, so maybe really high up into the triceps or into the armpits essentially is what you're looking for. And from high crow, you can move into crane pose, which is straightening the arms out from there. I'll demo that for you real quickly. So normal crow, knees to the triceps, right? High crow, you come really high up onto the toes, bend the elbows, and connect the knees as high up into the armpits as you can. Lean forward, and once again, lift the feet, connect the big toes, squeeze it in, activate the core. Now from here, if you want to take it into crane, start to extend the arms, straighten them out, squeeze everything in, okay? And then when you want to come out, come out. So if you want to take it there, take it there. Work where you are. If you feel that you continuously fall backwards, trust your weight forward. Keep working on strengthening through your fingertips. That, in my opinion, is the hugest thing. I see a lot of beginners who start here, and it's always coming up, and then they fall back down. And then they come up, the foot gets up, and they're all the way back down. None of their weight is in the fingertips. All that weight is in the heel of the palm, and all that comes down to is trust. You have to trust yourself in bringing weight into your fingertips. Trust those fingertips and squeeze them to the floor. The more you bring that trust into the fingertips, the more you'll be able to hold that position and breathe. And you're working a lot of stabilizing muscles in through the entire hand as well. So just one last part I want to touch on. If you have a crow pose and it's nice and solid, and you're working on jumping back through a vinyasa. Now, I wouldn't suggest this if you're still in low crow, okay? Just keep working on that core lift in the bandhas. If you do have normal crow, I want you to think of your body like a teeter-totter, okay? If you're working on crow and jumping your legs all the way back, you're gonna need a little weight coming forward to counterbalance that weight. So it's almost like you're surfing, waving the body back, okay? So trusting that chest coming even more forward than you're comfortable with as you shoot the legs back. And this variation took me a long time to feel comfortable with, so continue building that trust. But at the same time, don't be afraid. The worst that's going to happen is you belly flop, and you learn from it. You get stronger, you learn how to press more through the arms, you learn how to lean more forward, and you just start to get more and more comfortable with this. So I'm going to demo that one for you. So going to your vinyasa, coming into your crow position, knees to triceps, lean forward, lift, squeeze the toes together, draw everything in, find the bandhas, looking slightly forward. So once again, pull the chest forward, trust yourself, and jump back. Now notice that my chest didn't move forward at all. All it did was pulling that weight forward, allowed my legs to jump back, okay? That's the only difference. Now a lot of times when I see the jump back, people don't trust that weight forward, so they're still back here, and then they jump and their feet get caught along the way. So they're already taking all their weight back without pulling any of the weight forward. So as long as you can trust that weight forward, once again, notice that my chest doesn't really move forward, but I'm pulling it forward and then going through, okay? So once you can trust that, It will get stronger and stronger each time. Stay patient, work with it. So I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free, shoot them my way. It took a long time for me to feel comfortable into these poses. Arm balances have become a huge part of my practice. I've learned to love them, and it all started with crow pose. So if it's something you're interested in, great. Start with it. Start building that strength, building that confidence. If you're not interested in it, that's cool too. Skip over it. You don't need it as a part of your practice if you don't want it. If you're working on building from there, you can reach out to me, ask me questions, anything you want to know. Alignment is huge. Warming up your body is huge. Once you have those aspects to it, it all kind of starts to come with time and practice. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you gained something from this, and talk soon. Namaste.